Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. I have the absolute pleasure to have oh Jesus, here we go. Mike Kitko, correct? Am I
Correct.
saying it
That's
right?
You did.
All right, perfect. Now he has some unique perspectives in here about grief and about processing them, going through them, and talking about stuff like that. So welcome, Mike. Welcome to the podcast. And thank you so much for being on here and going through my barrage of questions.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. And I'm just looking forward to jamming. And we already had an awesome conversation that it's just going to be raw and uncut and unscripted. And we're going to see where the conversation goes. And those are the very, very best podcast episodes for me.
Absolutely. I agree with you because it's like, if you watch your tongue, then it's like, meh, stuff doesn't really come out.
Yeah.
You're kind of guarded, all those things. And to me, grief is messy, it's icky, it's ugly, but it's also beautiful and it's precious and it has its moments. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to come on the grief pod, because you're not normally in the grief field or work, correct?
Right. Well, I mean, not grief specifically, but you and I had a conversation about doing let's just say the work. So,
right.
And the work, it's not grief is an element of it, but there's also shame and there's guilt and there's anger and there's jealousy and there's vengeance and there's all this mishmash of emotions. And grief is a specific emotion, but the work that we do to release the work works. And I'm excited to share my journey through grief because I mean there have been a couple instances whether I questioned whether I was like I actually had a heart, and for lack of processing, if you can say that. But then after a while, when I started doing the work, like everything started coming out. So that's what I'm excited to share, that sometimes grief looks different or we walk through it differently. But at the same time, when we're ready to work, we work.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that I don't agree that there's just a specific way to go through grief or that like there's a specific timeline. I think that everyone obviously just goes through it how they go through it. And that sounds pretty, I don't know, wide ranging, I feel, but it comes down to where you've been, what you've done, and the mind work. Cause to me, grief is all mindset, 100%.
Yeah, I would agree, but I would add.
Yeah.
And I was introduced to this word years ago, where we talk about mindset, and mindset is really just about what's happening in your mind. But we do understand a connection between the mind and the body, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I like to use the word heart set. We've got mindset, we've got heart set. So, and it's about getting people from their mind into their heart, because that's where grief lives. The grief lives in the heart. So when you get someone from their mind to their heart, open their heart, like we start to express, whatever's in there, whether it be grief or anger or jealousy. But the word heart set really means a lot to me. It really does. And I think it's a different type of I think it's a different type of work, but it's still the same work. And like when I take people, I have guided meditations that I release, and they're really about a couple things. The thing that I love the most is helping people step into new wealth and success circumstances and new levels of love and ambition and joy and just the goodness of life. And part of that work is getting you into the future of what you're looking to create in your mind and then dropping you into your heart so that you begin to feel the expression of these new levels of emotion. So knowing that the same you, who you are right now, created your current circumstances, and the who you're becoming creates new circumstances. So when you get into your future in your mindset, and then drop into the emotion of that person, that character, into your heart set, then you begin to create new circumstances. But I think, Faith, I think the same thing works in also, I have meditations where there's a shadow work element.
Yeah.
And that's the work. That's where we release all the stuff to that's storing up the, I don't want to, I guess, lower level emotion. But when we release that, we make room for new stuff to come in. But we gotta let the old stuff out first before we can let the new stuff out, or new stuff in. And that's shadow work. And that's just as equally powerful as creation.
Oh my gosh, there is so much. Okay. So much on that one. First of all, I just learned about shadow work probably in the last 4 or 5 months. I didn't really know exactly what it was. And I bought the journal, like I have the 369 journal, and I have the accompaniment that goes with it, the shadow work journal and stuff like that. And what you said about letting those lower emotions out,
Sure.
let new ones coming in, like that, I feel that one to my core, because if you hold on to everything, it's just like a hoarder. If you hold on to everything, you have no room for anything else. And if you do have room for it, it's going to get mussed up and jumbled up with the stuff that you do have already.
You have a finite emotional capacity.
Absolutely.
And in shame and joy can't live in, grief and joy can't live in the same space. Like you're in one or the other. So in order to make room for joy to come in, we've got to let go of the grief. And going back to the early states of my journey, listen, I almost committed suicide 7 years ago. And I literally put the barrel of a gun in my mouth. And that's when, I was like, okay, well, holy crap. Everything that I've ever learned about, what religion is and what God is and what marriage is and what career is and what my health is, all the things that I've ever learned up to this point, put a gun in my mouth. So obviously I didn't have anything figured out. So I went on this journey of exploration of, what is this thing all about? Like I got nothing figured out. Like that was the tipping point. I know nothing about nothing, because if you know something that is powerful, then you don't end up with a gun in your mouth. So it's like you figure that stuff out. And for me, it was shame, because the person that puts a gun in their mouth is in a state of shame, and shame is feeling broken. There's something wrong with you. You're defective in some way. And so for me, we can talk about grief. We can talk about shame in the same way for me, right? That was my journey going through shame, but it works for grief too. And grief and joy can't live in the same space. We have to express the grief in order to make space for a new higher level emotion to come in. And this is what shadow work is all about. Now I'm going to give you, I'll give the listeners a couple books. All right. A couple awesome books. So this isn't self-promotion, because these aren't my books. Right. But there's a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. This book is all about shadow work. It's beautiful. And it was very cathartic for me to walk through this book and do the exercises. This isn't a book that you just read. This is an exercise book with information, to support the elements of the work.
This is for the doers out there that aren't just looking to talk about it, theorize on it. This is for the doers that want to move through the grief, move through all of the emotions, and get to a deeper understanding and a new consciousness of it.
You don't know your way to higher level circumstances. You do your way to higher level circumstances. It's not just about action in the world. It's about internal work to get in there and clear out the clutter and the damage and the destruction and whatever the internal conflicts. But in The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, Debbie Ford really gives us a lot, and she's since passed. But her life was very super purposeful, because she left us with this great book to help us get into the deepest, darkest places in our mind and our body, and start to let that shit go. The second book that I want to invite everybody to read, it's called Letting Go, by Dr. David Hawkins. And Dr. David Hawkins was a spiritual consciousness teacher. He's since passed as well. But he left an understanding of the emotional map of consciousness, all the way from shame and guilt and grief and anger and fear, blah, 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 all the way up to joy and peace and enlightenment. And what Dr. David Hawkins, his life work was devoted through a lot of kinesiological study, but his life work was dedicated to when you let go of shame, you jump into guilt. When you let go of guilt, you jump into something. So you're letting go of a lower level emotion so that you can step into a higher level emotion. So
Right.
if we hold on to grief, we'll never experience joy. And what I've realized is some people feel guilty for even thinking about letting go of the grief.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they owe somebody, they're doing somebody a disservice. The deceased, maybe they're grieving a relationship. They feel like if they let that go, that's their only connection, that's their only attachment, that's their only like connection to that person or whatever. And if they let that go, then it'll be gone. But we must be willing to let go of grief in order to step in, and that's the doing that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like when you're talking about that, it's almost like people wear sometimes their grief as a badge of honor. Like this is who I am, and it's it's heavy.
It becomes an identity. Heavy. Sure, your grief becomes an identity, and then you get trapped in your identity, and you're afraid because you don't know who you'll be without the grief.
Correct.
But I'll tell you who you'll be without the grief. You'll be happy. I mean, that's the point.
You without grief.
Yeah. Having no grief it's okay. It's awesome.
Right. It is. I agree. Moving through, like, I think that everyone, obviously grief it's a compounding effect. And, if you're not dealing with your grief on a, daily basis, like you have to manage it just like with anything else. Like you manage your weight, you manage your vehicles, you manage, your house, all the things. You have to manage it.
Well, you do. I want to open up let's take the management, and I want to describe for me. Now, this is just my experience. Eat the fruit and spit out the seeds. All right.
I love that.
So you don't have to listen to a word I say. You don't have to believe a thing I say, but this has worked for me and it works for a lot of people that I work with. Okay.
Okay.
So managing something is learning how to live with it.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay. So if we're learning how to live with it, then we're not letting it go. We're not releasing it.
Okay.
So instead of managing it, it's about letting it go. As it pops up, it's about letting it go. And when it pops up the next day, you let it go. And when it pops up the next day, you let it go, and you continue to let go of it until it's gone. Because every time you let go of a layer of anything, it's gone. So a couple more books. I'm gonna book you to death, Faith. All right.
That's okay. I love reading.
I'm gonna book you to death. There's a book by a fellow named Michael Singer, and it's called The Untethered Soul.
Okay.
It's Life 101. Okay. And what Michael Singer talks about is we go through life, and when there's a painful experience, we store it in our body. Okay. Yep. So, and he calls it a thorn. So now you store this thorn in your body, and now you protect it. And now it becomes a piece of you. It becomes an identity. And now you build a life around that thorn. Now you've taken this, like, emotion is energy in motion. Yes. Emotion flows up, down, in, and out of your body. But then something painful happens, and we store it in our body, and it gets trapped. Energy in motion becomes trapped. It becomes a thorn. And now we build a life around it. So we don't feel it. Like somebody's in a state of grief, so they'll hide all the pictures of the person, or they'll get rid of all the memories of that person because they don't want to feel the thorn. They'd rather keep it trapped inside of them.
Right.
So what this work is doing, and another book, it's by a fellow named Hale Dwoskin, Dwoskin. It's called the Sedona Method. And it literally is about learning how to release when things come up. So what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling grief. Am I willing to let this go? The answer is yes or no. And if I let it go, if I'm willing to let it go, then when I let it go, there's a layer of emotion that was trapped in my body that is now free, and it's been released. So I know when I started this work, I thought Well, I'm just releasing it. It's just coming back. I'm just releasing it. It's just coming back. But it's not true. You're letting go of a layer. And if you let go every time you feel it, you'll get to the core of it and it'll be gone. You'll vanquish it from your body. And again, when it's gone, it's replaced by something at a higher level. So,
So I have a question. When you say letting go, what do you mean?
So think about, I'm going to grab a pen.
Sure.
If I'm holding on to a pen, which I am, if I'm holding on to a pen and I want to let it go, I open my fingers.
Right. But like, so the emotions in your body, how does that?
So have you ever felt fear? And then you took a deep breath and the fear was gone?
Yep.
Same thing. That's letting go. Okay. And we think it needs to be a lot more complex than this, and it's really not. Okay. So when I feel fear, when I feel anxiety, when I feel anger, when I feel shame, when I feel guilt, when I feel any lower level emotion,
just take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath, and release it, and it's gone. Okay. Now, it sounds simplified, but again, this is why I'm giving you, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. That's shadow work. It's to unearth this stuff, to literally get into your mind and body and find it, identify it, and get it out of there, because it's destructive and it's damaging. That's why we're talking about letting go, the scale of consciousness, that when you let go of shame, you step into guilt. When you let go of anger, you step into whatever, right? You just keep stepping up the scale of consciousness. That's why I'm giving you this, the Sedona method, because Hale Dwoskin talks about how to let go and what it actually does. It's actually a cathartic process. What letting go means is and the untethered soul, where there's a thorn, you're literally letting go of layer by layer of grief. You're not managing it. You're literally actively letting it go. And again, I'm going to go back to, when you let an emotion out of your body, something has to take its place, because you are an energetic being. We are very, very little matter and a lot of energy. And emotion is energy in motion. When lower level of energy disappears from your body, higher level energy comes in to take its place. This is very, very important for not the management of the grief, but for the releasing of the grief. That's really what we're after. If we just want to manage it, all we're doing is building a life around it. If we want to release it, we're literally stepping into a higher level of evolution as an emotional being.
I really love that. That makes so much sense, as building a life around it versus releasing it. So I don't know that I necessarily build a life around my grief. I offer, so I guess I release a lot of mine. I mean, I'm sure there's still things that I like build around it. But I think a lot of it, I've released quite a bit of it, because I don't feel held back by it. I do the emotional stuff. Like, we have parties and whatnot, and we like, I just planned a birthday party for my daughter that passed, and invited like the whole community to come in and celebrate her and do all these things. And some people won't show up because of the grief of it. They can't face it. And some will show up because, the friendship and whatnot. And I'm sure there'll be tears and all the things. Right. But I think that that's a healing moment for them too. So,
which healing is releasing.
Yes.
When you heal, you release. When you release, you heal. So you're using the experience as a release technique, as an opportunity to release. This is all faith. This is all connected to release. It's
perfect.
It is how we evolve. It's by experiencing the thing. Can I tell a quick story? All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Listen, money has been my nemesis and my greatest source of freedom. And I'll share exactly. And this will bring us around to grief again. Okay. I'll tie it back into grief. In 2016, March of 2016, I got fired from my second executive level position in corporate America in about 20 months. Okay. My journey was one, I'm a Marine veteran. I got out of the Marine Corps, stepped into corporate, and got promoted really, really quickly. I'm a very talented professional in terms of I've got an MBA. So, I was on the fast track. And I had a lot of success, and I just stepped up the ladder of success, and I just kept getting promoted and big raises and big bonuses, and it was awesome. And it became my identity. All right. Now, I was raised in a lower middle a class blue collar work ethic house, that money was hard to make, that it was, there was scarcity. You've got to keep making it because you never know. And I mean, it was all just horrible money mindset stuff. I was raised in a very, very poverty mindset at house. So all I kept doing was I kept signing up for jobs that I didn't want and going to these higher levels because there were more zeros and there were more commas, right? That was it. That was my whole ambition. It was just to make as much money as I could because I was so scared of money. Okay. There was so much money fear in me. I was scared to death. And I just kept saying yes when the answer should have been no. I was 300 pounds, suicidal, drinking at toxic levels, just completely upside down. My wife and I were in a completely mentally, physically, mentally, emotionally abusive marriage, very codependent. I had two girls that were raised in a completely like combative home. It was very toxic. We taught them a lot of stuff. They've seen a lot of things they shouldn't have seen. My wife was in pharmaceutical addiction. So I lost my second job. And that's when I got to hit the reset. Now, in that circumstance, and I know it was a long way to get to this point, I was scared to death of money. Now, had a lot of it. And when it stopped coming in, my biggest fear was that I was going to lose all my money and lose my house. It wasn't about my family. It wasn't about, the 300 pounds that I was. It was, I'm going to lose my house and I'm going to lose my family, or I'm going to lose my money. That was my identity. That was my fear that I was holding on to. So let's equate that to grief. That was the emotion that I was holding on to, is the fear of money. Okay. So I was protecting it. I was insulating it by just, when I would feel fear, I'd go out and make more money. I was literally protecting the fear. I wasn't letting it go. Now I worked with a healer. And you and I had a conversation. I've done work on the Reiki side and cranial sacral therapy, and I've been to workshops and they're just really learning from the Sedona method and Dr. David Hawkins, and on this journey, what my guide, this person that I was working with, what they said is, I want you to, and it sounds completely delusional, but it works.
Those are my favorite.
he said, what are you scared of? I said, I'm scared of losing my house. Scared to lose my money. He said, cool. Here's what I want you to do. Sit on a floor, on a pillow, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to bring this experience to your mind, and then I want you to feel all the emotion of this experience. And he said, your wife and your kids just left you. You lost your house. You have no money left. You're completely poor. You're broke. You have no friends. You have nothing in this life. All you have is some tattered up clothes, and you have a sign that says, help me. And I want you to picture yourself on the side of a road while cars are passing by spitting on you. And I said, that sounds kind of stupid. And he said, but you've got a lot of stored up emotional garbage. And we've got to get it out of you. And by getting into the experience of it, you get to feel what's in there. And as you feel it, it starts to release. And so this is called shadow work, Faith.
Gotcha.
This is what shadow work is you put yourself into the experience that you're looking to avoid, because it's going to start to rip out all of that energy and motion, all the emotion that's tied up in that fear or in that experience that you've stored away, and your body will naturally start to process it. And as your body starts to naturally process it, and it starts to move through you, again, energy and motion, emotion moves up, down, in, and out of you. And as you start to harvest it and get it out of you, it's replaced by higher level stuff. And I did that work for a few months, and it was just a period of time, just a couple months later, after doing this work relentlessly, right, every day, a couple times a day, that I wasn't scared of losing my house or my money anymore. That fear, I had literally processed all the fear from decades and decades that had accumulated in my body. And as I processed it, like joy started taking over. And this is the same work that we can do with grief, but we, instead of managing it, we get in there and we feel the grief that's inside of us and start the process of letting it go. And again, this isn't just me saying this. This is Dr. David Hawkins in Letting Go. This is Debbie Ford. This is Michael Singer, right, in The Untethered Soul. All the Sedona Method. All these books say the same thing. You got shit that's trapped inside of you. Get it out. Let it go. Face it. Face the dark circumstances that you'd rather avoid, so that you can harvest that raw painful energy that's inside of you so that you can move into a higher state of being. And
I
this is
love
the
that.
work. This is the work that absolutely changed my life. And like, I'm not that fear-based, angry, grief-ridden, shameful guy that I used to be. There's so much joy in my life, and that's why people want to be around me so much.
I agree with that. I like that. I was just on a podcast just recently talking about like when I wrote my book, like that was the most emotional roller coaster of a journey
Mm,
that I had been on my entire life. And like literally by the end of the day, I felt like I had just been like carrying, forklifts around all
mm,
day long. I was
right.
so physically, mentally, and emotionally tired. I
Hmm.
slept like a baby the whole time I was writing that, for the week
Yeah.
or two that I was writing it. It just, because you're on this high and you're remembering and you're
Mhm.
going through it and facing it and not running from. I'm a big proponent of, the obstacle is the way. Face it head on.
Beautiful.
Don't go
Absolutely.
around it. Don't go through it. Don't go under it. I'm sorry, don't go over it, around it, or under it.
Understood.
You have to go through it and
Go through
face
it.
it before you can actually, like heal,
Yeah.
find some semblance of healing for yourself through whatever it is you're going through.
And I'm going to offer. So I've seen this in with dealing with whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's grief, whether it's loneliness,
Mhm.
whatever the challenge that the person's dealing with, it all comes back to one of two choices. Okay, so there, and I'm going to talk about. Let's just talk about grief.
Talk about it.
Let's just go.
Yep.
So if I were to say, when I'm working with someone one on one, and I'm not a counselor, I'm a coach. So like counselors and therapists deal with the past, and
Yeah.
coaches deal with the future. So there's a big difference. But I ask them questions to help them decide if they want to move forward. Right. So I get to ask them questions, and then they get to choose if they want to go. But
Yeah.
if somebody says, yeah, I'm just, I can't get over the loss of my father. I've got one person that's in mind right now as I'm saying this. And I said, they said, I can't get over the loss of my father. He was my best friend. He was my everything. He was this, he was that. I was like, yes. Are you willing to let him go?
Right.
And sometimes the answer is, but you don't understand. The answer is no.
Right.
In that moment, when they're defending their grief, they're not in a place to move forward.
Right.
So they're literally sending a clear signal to me when they say, but you don't understand, or whatever. If the answer is not yes, they're holding on to their grief.
Yes.
Nothing that anybody can do to take it away. Now, I've seen this happen with money. Hey, somebody, if they're struggling with money, say, yeah, but if there's, do you know any opportunities to make money in the world? But you don't understand. Got it. You're,
Yep.
you're choosing,
You're closed off at
you're
that
choosing
point.
your brokenness. You're choosing your
Yep.
brokenness, and you're not willing to let it go. I'm not going to try to take away your money problems. Because
No.
if you're going to fight for your money problems, you can have them. If you want to fight for your grief, you can have it. If you want to fight for your loneliness, you can have it. If you want to fight for your pain, you get to have it. No one can take it away from you. It's yours. It's a possession that you've chosen to take. And sometimes, Faith, people don't like to hear that they're choosing to hold on to their grief.
I agree with you.
But it is the truest truth of all the truth, that if you're choosing to hold on to something, nobody can take it away. And you've built an identity and a possession around it.
Right.
But
Absolutely, because you can't
when
help anyone that is
yeah,
in that situation because they're not open to it. They're not receptive to it because they will fight you
they
tooth and
will,
nail to
but
keep
you
it.
don't,
It's a
but you don't
losing battle.
understand. But you
Yeah.
don't understand. Got it.
I can remember all the times I've said it too, like with a
Yeah.
weight issue. I've had a weight issue now for about 17 years. And for the longest time, like I would hire coaches, I would do this, I would do that. And it's like, well, you're gonna have to do this. I'm like, but you don't understand. I can
Yeah.
remember specifically saying those
Mhm.
words. And then just recently, I'm like, okay, I'm done with the excuses. I'm done with the holding on to this because I don't want this to be my identity. It's like, okay, now I can move. It's up to me to figure out my path forward
Yeah.
and then find the tools and the solutions to assist me on that journey. Grief is no different than anything else, like with the money, with the weight, with the finances, with the marriage problems, with anything else. Like it's your job
Yeah.
to, if you want it bad enough, you will find a way.
Yeah. There's a teacher. His name's Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's
Yes.
probably my favorite. I've been to a couple advanced workshops, and they're week-long workshops, and man, you just work, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of this work. You just work. You meditate and do shadow work for probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Like it's like you are
Yeah.
working. He's teaching you, but you're working.
Yeah.
He guides you through. It's kind of like the way I teach kind of follows along that same trajectory. It's why I do meditation, release meditations, and things like that. But you do work. He literally gets you into your mind and into your body to harvest what's in there, to get it out, to replace it with something new. And it's aggressive, and there's screaming in the crowd, and there's people like there's laughter in the crowd, and there's crying in the crowd, and there's like,
Yeah.
you're just like, there's so much emotion in the room, and by the end of the week, that it's like a place of joy because people have let so much shit go.
Yeah.
But there's 2,000 people in this auditorium.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So he's not a little deal. This guy is
Right.
a big deal in this world. He's got 2,000 people in this auditorium, and they come from 50 in the ones that I've been to. They've come to 55, 60 countries in the world, right? They've paid $2,500 a ticket. So it's a $4.5 million event, and
Yeah.
it's a week long, and you work from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. Right. That's when you're in session from, and there's breaks. And I
Right.
got to point to all this madness. He doesn't take one question. He teaches, and he guides you through shadow work and through creation work, because they look the same, they're a little different, but
Mhm.
whatever, you're letting go and you're replacing, you're letting go and you're replacing, you're getting out what's expired, and you're getting something new in there, right?
Right.
This is why by the end of the week you come and everybody's scared and they're angry and they're whatever, and by the time you leave, everybody's like light as air because you've let go of shit and you've replaced it with something new.
Right.
And at the end of the seminar, he says, you may wonder why I don't take any questions. Why it's like, I'm up here on the stage and you guys are all out there and there's no interaction. You might be wondering. He says, because I learned a long time ago that all questions are, you're looking for an excuse.
Or a
Just
validation. Yeah.
just do the work. If you
Yeah.
ask me a question, all you're doing is looking for an excuse. Just do the work. And he's like, everybody started making more gains when I stopped taking questions,
Yeah.
because they were literally just looking to protect their pain. They were looking for
That's
a way.
true.
Stop looking for excuses and start doing the work if you want to live in joy. But if you want to live in grief, hold on to it and just be honest with yourself. It's okay. You don't
It
owe
is. Yeah.
anybody your grief. If you want to feel grief, if you if you've built an identity and a personality around this grief, if you've built that, if you're holding on to that entanglement, that emotional entanglement that you have with that person, if that represents love to you at that moment, then be honest that you're not willing to let it go, and just be honest with yourself and everybody you come in contact with. This is my grief, and there's nothing you can do to take it away from me. But if
Right.
you're willing to let it go, then let go of all the excuses. It's not serving you anymore.
No. No, they don't serve anyone anymore at all. But I think for a moment, like when I had the conversation with this lady, she had lost her daughter in a freak vehicle accident. She was rear-ended and they pushed her vehicle out into traffic, and she was killed instantly, her and the driver. And she was 3 months pregnant with her grandchild. And going through that, and this was years ago. She just wrote a book last year, and we were talking about how it has released so much of the grief,
Yeah.
like going through all of this. But the first 3 years or 6 years of it, because there was court cases and different things like that, um, she'd held on to it because she didn't know how to process it,
Right.
going through, because she kept being bringing back to this one spot because of the court case and all of these things. And so it comes to a point in time when you can hold on to it and it's yours, like you said,
Mhm.
but then it comes to a point, like if you want to move beyond it and not stay stuck in those raw emotions anymore and stop with those thorns, that, yeah, it makes perfect sense. You need to
But
find a way.
one quick slight reframe. You
Mhm.
you said she kept being reminded, so she couldn't release it. That is the best school for releasing it.
Hmm.
So think about this. If you're being reminded of this constantly, then you have it, you're feeling it constantly. And those are opportunities to release.
Yeah.
Like the best way to get over the fear of not having money is to lose it all.
That is true.
Because then you're forced to face it. So you could call, and there's a book everybody to death. There's a book called Conversations with God, and it talks about Earth school, right? So that Earth is a school, right? In terms
Mhm.
of there's nothing to learn, but the Earth is a school in terms of, we're constantly being faced with experiences that cause us to feel things.
Yes.
So when you go to court and you're reminded of this grief, that's the best time to let go of the grief. And if you go back the next day and there's more grief that you feel, it's the best time to let go of the grief. So that was like an opportunity to keep letting go of layers. Now, not everybody is interested in doing that, or not
Right.
every
Especially not at the beginning.
right, or
Hard. It's
sometimes
hard.
sometimes not for the rest of your life.
You're right. There's a lot of people. I know some people that have died, literally died from a broken heart,
Yeah,
that they chose not to. And, that's their journey. That's,
yeah.
you know,
I talked about loneliness. Some people they're riddled with they're not alone. They have people, but they feel lonely. They
yes.
feel they no matter how many people they're around, they feel lonely, and they're not willing to let go of that feeling because
I
they don't
think
know how
some
to.
people don't know how.
And then sometimes you say,
Yeah.
"Hey, are you willing to let that go? And can I teach you?" And they say, "But you don't understand."
Right. Yeah.
So there has to be an appetite for it too, right? And it's
There
not just
does.
learning the technique. It's being open and receptive that you can eliminate that in your life.
Right. It's
There's a
applying it. Yeah.
there was a teacher. Her name was Louise Hay. I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay, but
Mm.
she wrote there was there is a publishing company called Hay House Publishers,
Yep.
and
Yep.
a lot of great that was Louise Hay. That was her
Okay.
publishing company, and I believe Dr. Joe Dispenza's on there as well. Dr. Hawkins was too, but either way, I digress. When where was I going with that? Holy cow! Oh, so Louise Hay introduced, I guess, to a larger extent, to a larger audience, that every physical ailment is tied to an emotional, it has an underlying emotional component. And this is why Reiki works, and this is why cranial sacral works, and this is why shaman work and all this stuff, whatever. The
Hmm.
point is that when someone has a physical ailment, there's some emotional connection to it. When you let go of the emotional connection, the physical ailment will heal itself. So like pay attention. If you ever feel like you're overburdened in life, your shoulders will probably start acting up. You might get some joint pain and you'll say, it's just arthritis. No, you're feeling more burden, right? So your body is literally showing you,
Gotcha.
it's showing you that there's burden. Your lower back is financial security. When there's a lot of people that experience lower back pain, and it's financial security. And Louise Hay spent a lifetime kind of showing that connection, that physical emotional connection. This is why the mind can heal the body, I mean, there's now documented proof the mind can heal the body.
Right.
So the point is when you get into your body and understand that emotional connection and start to let go of the emotion, the physical ailment will rearrange itself. Right. So there's times where someone says, "Hey, I'm having migraines." And I'm saying, "Hey, there's a great book called You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it talks about the mind." But you don't understand because they want their medical condition. It's the same stuff.
It
They
is the
want
same stuff. I agree
their
with that.
medical condition, right? In your case, weight loss. Well, but if you do shadow work and you understand the stories in your mind and in your body about weight loss and your health and why you
Hmm.
eat the way you do and why you exercise or don't exercise the way you do, or how fat stores or how inflammation stores in your body, or foods that are right for you. If you understand those things and you start to get your body in motion, you're a human being. The weight will, but you don't understand. Okay, got it.
Right.
You want your weight, issues. I know exactly where you are.
Yep.
And sometimes we just need to be blunt. Do you want your shit, or do you want to be free from it?
Right.
Because that decision is up to you. We can let go of grief. The question is, will you?
Right.
Everybody can.
I love that. That was that. fantastic. Like, I could probably sit here for days and listen to you talk about all this stuff. Like,
Well,
it is,
this is the work that changed my life. This is the work that changed my marriage. I filed for divorce and then she came in, my wife. I literally started this work and I started like realizing that I'm really not a broken human being. I'm really not broken. There were just stories, like religious stories inside that
yeah,
were just trapped in my mind, that I'm a shameful being for being born and somebody died for me. Like how
yeah,
can you even live with yourself, right? You're a shameful being. You're broken. You're a sinner. I'm like, holy fuck. I'm like, 3 days old. How can I be a
right.
broken sinner? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah,
going to Catholic school and taking on all of those stories and accumulating them and holding on to them and building shame in my body and taking accountability for stuff that I didn't do and all this stuff, it created so much pain and suffering in me that
right.
when I started letting all those stories go, I started like experiencing a higher level of life. My wife didn't like that because she fell in love with the old painful Mike. She didn't fall
Yeah,
in love with the new joyful Mike. And this is why we don't like people changing in our life, because
yeah,
we fall in love with a version. We don't fall in love with 5 versions from that person. We fall in love with that version. And when
right.
I became a version 2, she didn't like that. And she started attacking and I filed for divorce. And she said, okay, I don't want a divorce. How do I do this too? And now we have a beautiful marriage together and we've healed our marriage. We've healed our family. This is the
That's
work that
beautiful.
changes everything, but you've got to let go of who you think you are or what's trapped in your mind and your body to become the version of you that it's a diamond in there, but you're holding on to so much garbage you can't recognize the beautiful, beautiful diamond that's inside of you. But you are that beautiful diamond. You're not this emotion that you're holding on to, but you must be willing to let it go if you want to experience that diamond. And if you don't want to experience the diamond, just be honest with yourself and just be honest with people around you. I know I can
Yeah.
be a diamond, but I'm choosing not to be. When you say that, when you get honest with
Yeah, it
yourself,
sounds like, well,
when
I
you
want to be a diamond, but
when you get honest that you don't, you can, you can be a diamond and you're choosing to hold on. When you say that to yourself and get clear, I bet you start letting it go. I bet you start letting it go.
absolutely, I think so.
Mhm. This is the work that changes lives. And it's not therapy. This is individual work and nobody can do
Right.
it for you. This is about getting into your old stories and the emotional patterns in your body and rearranging them. And only you can do this work.
Yes. I've said that for a long time. Grief work is yours. It's, oh, I mean, just life work is yours. Your
Life work.
life, you get to live it. You get to
Yeah,
choose how it goes, and you're narrating the story. And, what story are you going to choose today? Where are you going
correct.
to go? What are you going to do?
And when we look at the emotional map of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins, we'll see that from shame to enlightenment, there's a whole host of emotions through, and grief is one of them.
Hmm.
So just like someone's dealing with grief, someone's dealing with fear, someone's dealing with shame, someone's dealing with guilt, someone's dealing with apathy, someone's dealing with all the pride, unhealthy pride. These are all just emotions on the map
Yeah.
of consciousness, and there's always going to be an emotion you're dealing with. In this podcast, you're just dealing with grief, but if
Yes.
when you let it go, there's going to be another emotion to deal with, and you get to deal with that one too.
Yeah. I like that you said you get to deal with it too, because,
Yeah.
or yes, you don't. You just choose not to, but it's your choice either way, because that's all we ever have is choices, and each choice brings us to a different, a different reality. And
I'm,
yeah. So, okay.
I'm just looking to be free. Whatever
Yes,
emotion pops up, I just want to let it go so I can be free.
I love that. It's so powerful because you are in control when
Mhm.
you decide that you are in control. And when you decide that you're not in control and you're going to let circumstances and situations control you, then they control you. And so that, I mean, it's a powerful mindset work that you're
It is.
doing. And I know you call it heart work too, but I think it all starts in the mind first to be able to like start the processes going.
Absolutely.
Because you have to have that thought, say, no, I don't want that anymore. I
Mhm.
don't want to go there anymore. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to, whatever it is. And you have to have that thought first to be able to even then say, okay, what does that look for me on the inside? What does that look for me? How can I change that? How can I bring it down, like you said, into the heart work to push it out, to be able to do the things and change
Look,
it?
listen, I don't know how long we have, but can I tell it? Can I tell a quick story?
You can tell a story.
Awesome, because there's Faith, there's so much to share, and because this is, like I said, this is first of all my life's work, but it's also the most powerful work that we can
Yes.
do to create what we want to create in our life. But I'm gonna. This was a weight related conversation. Okay, so it was how this fellow that I was engaged in this conversation was very big. He was about 350 pounds. He was a big fella, and listen, he and I were allies. All right, we were there. He knew I had his best interest in mind. He knew I had, like, vice versa. Right, we were there. I was like doing everything I could to help him let go of this story and all this stuff that that he had experienced that helped him balloon to 350 pounds. Right. And we were in a bread Panera. So, and it's probably the worst place to do this, but we did it anyway. Anyway, he was 350 pounds, and I was trying to show him. I took him through an exercise because I was trying to show him what he believed and why he felt what he felt. All right, and he wasn't understanding. So I did this exercise with him. I said, listen, all right, I'm gonna say some really harsh stuff right now. I'm going to say, do I have your permission? I got permission. Do I have your permission to say some really harsh stuff right now out of love? But I'm going to say some really these things are not going to feel good. And he gave me permission. I said, you understand that I'm coming from a place of love. This is like, I want to help you. And he said, yes. I just wanted to reiterate that like 4 or 5 times, right? I said, okay, cool. And remember, this guy's 350 pounds. I said, you are so skinny. Like, you are like a twig. Like, if you turn sideways, nobody can see you. If the wind blows, you're going to freaking blow away. You're like, there's nothing of you. You're like, you got to eat, boy. Like, you're going to blow away with the wind because you're so skinny. He started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? And he said, because none of that's true. I said, cool. You are freaking disgusting. You all you do is freaking stuff your face, and you don't have any self-respect, any self-dignity. You are disgusting. And I started, and you could see his face starting to get red. And you could see him starting to get embarrassed. You could see him start to you could see his shoulders go up and his head go down. And I said, hold on, why are you feeling these things? And he looked back and he says, well, if I didn't believe those things and I was laughing and now I'm ashamed, I must believe those things that you're saying to me.
That's powerful.
This is what happens, is no one can make you feel anything.
Yeah.
But they will poke what you feel about yourself.
Yes.
No one makes you feel anything. The death of someone didn't make you feel grief. You are choosing to feel grief because there's some truth in you that it's revealing. Our work is to get in there. And when we say, I'm choosing to feel, it's very liberating because now we have ownership of it, like real ownership, and we're in control of it, and we could do something. Instead of saying, you make me feel, or somebody's death made me feel, or when they left me, they made me feel, or you said those words and you made me feel. When you change those to, that person died, and now I'm choosing to feel grief. Now you're in control, and you can do something that's actionable. But if you just think that something made you feel a certain way, you're just a victim, and there's nothing you can do as a victim. But when you let go of that victim mentality, that it happened to you, instead of you're doing something to hold on to it, that is when liberation really, really happens, Faith.
That's powerful. I love that. Because it's so true. What do you identify with? Like, do you identify with like with your story with the thin guy or the fat guy?
Right.
Like, what's your identity?
He saw in that moment what he really thought about himself, because when you take somebody through that, they don't believe
You can
something about them.
physically see the changes.
Heck yeah, you can.
Like, I could physically see them when you were talking. Like, you could see like the changes in your face when you're talking and stuff too. Like, and I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I find all of it interesting because I think I've said this before, like the more you know yourself, the more you can move through things with a greater speed
Yeah.
and help yourself much quicker than if you just come in blindly. Like when I first came into grief blindly, it was like, oh, I'm grieving and I'm sad and all this. And I didn't understand all the emotions coming in. I didn't understand the trajectory of stuff. I went by the little thing that says, oh, you should do this and this and this and this. And it's like, that did not work for me. Like I had to find my own path through them, like, and for them, all these things. And yeah, I don't know. Powerful.
I think, and you and I had a conversation about my grief journey in terms of, I don't know if I ever had one. So, and I want to share this story because grief is not a thing for everyone. It, maybe feeling grief, but holding on to grief is not something for everyone. And I want to
Right.
share in 2004, in June, on June 1st of 2004, my wife and I, with our now older daughter, my wife was pregnant with our second daughter, but we were on June 2nd, 2004, we were supposed to get on a plane to go back to my hometown of Baltimore, Maryland, to see my dad. Hadn't seen him in a couple years, and we were supposed to go back. We moved from Baltimore to Oregon in 2002, so it'd been 2 years since I'd seen him. But he was in a hospital, and he had been in and out of the hospital, and he was getting out of the hospital on June 1st. And on June 2nd, we were going to go see him, and it was going to be awesome. And on June 1st, like the next day, we literally had plane tickets, and we were going to go. On June 1st, he slipped and fell in the hospital and died. So our visit back home to Maryland, to Baltimore,
Yeah.
turned from a vacation to go and for my father to see his granddaughter, because he loves little kids, he loves his grandchildren, and it turned into a funeral. So, and then I remember, going through that week, and my brother was there, and we were hanging out a little bit, and just going through all the family stuff, not really feeling a whole lot. Right. To be honest, not feeling a whole lot
Yeah.
about
No.
my dad, but I mean, that wasn't there for me. Like the grief wasn't there. I was there was sad, but it wasn't real grief. It wasn't mourning. And we were coming home on a plane 7 days later, and when we got to our house, we there was a message on the answer machine. We back in the day, the answer
Yeah.
machine, and we listened to the recording, and it was my mom telling me that my brother died, like the day that we left, the morning that we left, because my brother had type 1 diabetes. He struggled through that for a long
Yeah.
time, and my dad used to check up on him a lot. And
Yeah.
my dad was dead, and he didn't check up on my brother, and my brother died. So I went from having a dad, a brother, and a mom, and a mom, to a mom, and that was it.
Yeah.
In a couple days. So there was no grief. There was some sadness. There were some memories, but there was no grief. And then my mom came out to live with us, a couple years later. And then when she came out, she was with us for a few months, found out she had stage 4 cancer. And like 2 months later, or a month later, a month and a half later, she was dead. So I went from having a dad, a mom, and a brother to no one, and no extended family, like in that we're all genetic. But the point is, there was no grief. There was some sadness, but there was no grief. But when I started doing this work, there was a lot of stuff that started coming out. I'm sure grief was in there somewhere, but I've never done any grief work. I've just done a whole lot of emotional work, and whatever's in there starts to come out. For me, shame was a big part of my game. I just felt broken.
Yeah.
And that was the harvesting. All of this work, that was just a harvesting of what all's not serving. Let's just get it out so that we can replace it with something else. But I never got stuck in grief by itself.
Right.
Getting stuck in grief is a choice.
I agree. It is. It is, and you'll always be there until you choose not to be.
Exactly. Until you choose not to be.
Yeah.
If you choose not to be.
Correct. And some people never make that choice. Absolutely. Some people never make that choice. I am fascinated by this conversation. It has absolutely been like eye-opening. And it speaks a lot about like things that have happened in my life and the choices that I have made to get to where I am right now, because we're all choices. Every moment we're faced with choices. Every second we're faced with choices. And one specific thing that sticks out to me that I had happen, I love coffee. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Me too.
I could drink it by the pots, 2 or 3 pots a day, no problem. I could drink it at nighttime and then fall asleep 5 minutes later. No problem. Never had an issue with coffee. All of a sudden, I think it was around November or something, I no longer like coffee.
Hmm.
I didn't want coffee, didn't crave it, nothing. I was like, my mom is like, well, because she lives with us. She's like, you want some coffee? I'm like, no, I'm good. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want nothing. I'm good. And I switched over to tea. Hated tea before, couldn't stand it, didn't identify with it. Even built a freaking coffee bar in my house.
Hmm.
No longer drink coffee. I have everything to go with it now, but I don't drink. Now I have a tea and I drink my tea all day. So I find it interesting how things serve us to a certain point and then they're no longer serving us.
Yeah.
So then we can take them out of our life or they disappear from our life and then we can choose something else that may be healthier for us to go forward and move forward. And it's not necessarily because of anything changes that I had done, just
The
but I
word,
don't know, maybe I did.
Faith, the word that I like is expired.
Yeah.
Coffee just expired in your life. Your love of coffee just expired. And I was in one of my workshops one time and where I was leading people to understand what pain was in their life and what they were holding on to. And it was very clear that this one fellow's marriage had expired. It was very, very clear. And he was not willing to accept that marriages expire. He was
Yeah.
not willing to accept it. And everything in your life comes into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And sometimes, like especially when we're talking about grief and we're talking about death, not everybody comes into your life for your lifetime.
Correct.
They come into your life for their lifetime, or for maybe just a reason, maybe just a season. So, but when we look at everything as permanent, that everything needs to be permanent, we're stopping the opportunity for evolution and for growth, right?
We are.
Things come in for a reason, season, lifetime, even coffee and even marriages.
That's
Reason,
true.
season,
That's
or
true.
lifetime. Could be a lifetime, but it could also be just be a season as well.
It is. And I think that society has a huge stigma on like grief and how you should experience it, how you should act with it, how you should do all of these things. And if we listen to society, that's when I think when a lot of people get stuck within the grief, because if you process it differently, then you're different. People, ridicule you, whatever, or they think that you didn't care, didn't love, that's a whole other podcast episode on what other people think of you.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to be free. I just want to be happy. And listen, I've got a beautiful wife and I've got 2 kids and I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. And there is a probably a good chance that one of those, if not many of those, will die at some point in the next, few years. So,
yeah.
and I'm not just talking about my kids and my wife, but my dogs and cats will go. And I'm 51 years old. I plan to live a long life, and there's a possibility that one of my family members are going to go too.
Yeah.
So, like holding on to the permanency of anything it's really setting yourself for a lot of disappointment.
I agree.
And when we let go of things, we let go of the attachments that we have to things, the emotional attachment, not the emotional connection. But when we let go of the emotional attachment before they perish, then we don't have to grieve when they do. And I guarantee you, when you let go of the emotional attachment before they pass, you'll enjoy their life a whole lot more because you won't be holding on as tightly.
I think that's true. With our daughter, when she passed, it was because the first thing, society is telling us, I think most people know that they're going to die. At some point, they're going to die. But we have this disassociation with death, and we don't talk about death because, oh my gosh, that's permanent and that's, going to cause all these emotions and feelings, and we don't want to deal with that. So after she passed, I had been obviously, listening to the world and all these things. And the thing that resonated with me the most, that was the hardest for me to get over, was the fact that you're never supposed to bury your child. which there's
Mm.
no books written that say you don't bury your child. There's none. We've got books that are written about lots of parents that have buried children. But
Sure.
yet in my mind it was, this is my child. I'm supposed to outlive her, but that's a supposition that I
It's a
am
story.
taking.
It's a story. Yeah.
It
It's a
is a
belief. It's a
story.
belief. It's not reality. It's not truth.
Right. Well, no, I lived it. It's not true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true. Same with my granddaughter when we lost her. It's not true. Like you can bury people at any age. And it's just so it's very interesting for me because it's like so emotional with that one. But it's like I know that, the things I'm saying versus the feelings I'm feeling, they're not matching,
So
you know?
so let's unpack this a little bit. Because
Okay, do
here's a
it.
because here's a really cool way to see what beliefs you're holding in your life.
Okay.
Okay. So if we were to, there's 8 billion people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A little over 8 billion people. If we all went to the top of the Empire State Building and jumped off, what would happen to all 8 billion people?
They'd probably all die.
Every single person
Yeah.
on this planet would die. Right? That's a
Yep.
truth. Gravity's a
Right.
truth. You jump off, if you are a human being in this meat suit and you
Mhm.
jump off of a skyscraper, you will splat. It's
Right.
truth. It's absolute 100% chance that it will happen. That that a parent shouldn't bury a child. Is that a truth or is it a belief?
As a belief.
It's a belief. And beliefs are all liars in
Yeah.
some shape or form, because there's an exception. And if there's one exception to the rule, it's not a truth. You can get to let that belief go.
Yeah.
So where in my world, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and I help them like scale their business and create more wealth and have more of a positive impact in this world. And at the same time, connecting with their spouse at a deeper level, connecting with themselves at a deeper level, feeling more joy and more love in the world, all of this stuff at the same time. And I get to work with them and I get to help them like understand what beliefs are they holding that are just causing pain in their life.
Right.
And there are some people who believe that making money is really hard. So when
Yeah.
you believe that making money is really hard, you are going to make it hard to make money. The
I've
belief
believed that
the
one.
belief creates the reality. The reality doesn't create the belief.
Yeah.
So if there's one person on the planet that doesn't have a hard time making money, it's not a truth, it's a belief. And your belief creates the outcome. The outcome doesn't create the belief. The belief creates a circumstance. The circumstance doesn't create belief. When I thought that making money, when I believed that making money was hard, I made making money hard.
Yeah.
And when I let that go and saw differently and chose differently, money started flying into my life. So we like our beliefs, we protect our beliefs and we hold on to our beliefs without realizing that our beliefs are causing us pain in some way, shape, or form. Most
They
beliefs
are.
are causing your pain. So when I believed in an angry, vengeful, jealous, narcissistic, punitive, punishing God, I mean, my life was pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Now that I believe in a God of all love, and absolute joy that just always wants the best of me, but is going to welcome me home no matter what, man, feels really good.
Change. Life changing.
It's freeing, right? And I get to choose which God do I believe in. I get to choose
Right.
which God. But there's somebody who still believes in the angry, narcissistic, vengeful God. I believe in a freeing God that's all love all the time. And somebody who has a jealous, vengeful God is going to tell me I'm wrong.
Yep.
And like maybe they should pick a more freeing belief. Anyway, there were philosophers, the Stoics, back
Yes.
in
Yep.
back in ancient Rome, and the Stoics said if you don't come to terms and face your own death a couple times a day, you're not truly living.
Mm.
If you don't fall in love with your death, then you're living life to survive and not really living. You are trying to avoid death instead of living. If you don't fall in love with your own death, you'll never truly understand what it feels like to be alive. And when you fall in love with the imminent nature of the people in your life, with their death, you'll never truly love them as powerfully as you could. I was on a phone call with a guy. I was on a phone call with a guy one time, and he had built a massive business, a couple of massive businesses, a lot of money, and from the outside looked like he was in an awesome marriage. And he called me, because these wealthy people, they call me when they're stuck, right? And he called me and he says, "Hey man, it feels like my world is freaking like shrinking around me, and I like everything's falling apart. I got everything, but it just feels like my whole life I'm suffocating." And I started working through this with him. I said, "Hey man," kind of like this exercise I did with that dude. I said, "Hey, I'm going to say some things, and hopefully this helps." All right. I said, "You're going to die. Your wife's going to die. Your 2 kids, they're going to die. The businesses that you built, it's going to perish. Any legacy you live, going to be forgotten. Any amount of money you accumulate, it's going to be wiped out. At some point, an asteroid will hit the earth and it'll all just explode. So anything you build, any legacy you leave, any like genetic stuff that you leave in the world, it's all going to be gone, because like in this universe, stuff collides all the time and it just blows up. And then there's going to be like no signs that there was ever a human existence. And so, yeah, don't take any of this stuff too seriously." And he went, "Oh my God, I don't know how, but that feels freeing." And his darkness turned to light, because he was taking it all way too seriously, when he's going to die. And so is everybody he loves.
Yeah.
And anything he builds is going to perish, and anything he accumulates is going to be wiped away at some point. Just don't take any of it too seriously. If you're not having fun in this game, you're doing it all wrong. We're here to enjoy the 80, 90 years that we have, not to hold on for survival, not to hold on for dear life. You don't stand a chance. You're not getting out of this meat
No,
suit.
I've said that before too. You don't get out of this alive. You might as well plan for it.
Neither does anybody else that you
Nope.
love, or anything you build, or anything you create.
That is true.
We take
Oh my
everything.
gosh, it has been an absolute joy having you on this podcast. Thank you so much for being on here and opening my eyes to so many different things, all the books that you dropped. I'm so excited to go get them all and read them all and consume them all. And I hope I hope all you listeners were paying attention. I hope you were listening. I hope you're writing down the book selections that he mentioned. I hope that you can move your beliefs to truths, and eliminate a lot of the grief that you're having, a lot of these emotions that keep coming up for you, and the places that you're stuck in your life. If not, reach out to him, reach out to Mike. He'll help you
in some way, shape, or form. And listen, I mean, there are listeners out there right now that are absolutely, maybe they didn't make it to the end of the podcast because they're so repulsed by what was coming out. Listen, I love you. And I appreciate your journey, and I wish you like the very best of luck. The people that maybe it helped and it started the process of healing, I love you. Nice work. Thanks for being open. Thanks for being receptive. I'm here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks guys for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.